A single dad shields his daughter when a powerful CEO is nearly killed in a dark parking lot. One night of courage changes everything. He's hailed as a hero, offered a new life. But then a child whispers, "Mommy says you're my daddy." The mystery deepens. The enemies close in. His daughter is suddenly in danger, and the CEO's past is deadlier than anyone imagined. Can one father protect his child, uncover the truth, and stop a murder before it destroys them all? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The kitchen in the Turner household was small but warm, filled with the comforting aroma of mac and cheese, Emily's favorite comfort food. Jack watched his daughter twirl her fork through the creamy pasta, her textbook propped open beside her plate. The fluorescent light above cast a soft glow on her face, reminding him so much of her mother it made his chest ache. "Dad, I've been thinking about State University," Emily said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Their journalism program is really good, and it's only 2 hours away." Jack nodded, trying to hide the worry that immediately creased his forehead. "That's a great school, sweetheart." He pushed his own barely, touched dinner around his plate, mentally calculating tuition costs. Emily, perceptive as always, reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I know it's expensive, but I can keep working at the diner, maybe get a scholarship." "You focus on your grades," Jack said firmly, managing a smile. "Let me worry about the money part." His military pension helped, but college costs were another matter entirely. Still, seeing the hope in Emily's eyes made him determined to find a way. "Oh no," Emily suddenly groaned, slapping her forehead. "My history homework. I left it in my locker at the diner. Mrs. Peterson will kill me if I don't have it tomorrow." Jack glanced at the clock. 8:45 p.m. "The diner's still open. We can swing by and grab it." He stood up, grabbing his jacket from the hook by the door. "Better than facing Mrs. Peterson's wrath, right?" Emily laughed, pulling on her own sweater. "She's not that bad. Just passionate about the Civil War." The drive to the diner was peaceful, with only a few cars on the road. The familiar neon sign of Betty's Diner cast pink and blue reflections on the wet pavement. Jack pulled into the nearly empty parking lot, the headlights sweeping across the windows where a few late-night customers nursed their coffee. "I'll be quick," Emily promised, reaching for her door handle. Before she could open it, a black sedan came tearing into the parking lot, tires screeching against the asphalt. The expensive car swerved erratically before coming to an abrupt stop, nearly hitting a lamppost. "Stay in the car," Jack ordered, his military training kicking in as he watched the driver's door fly open. A man stumbled out, tall, well-dressed in an expensive suit, but his face was pale with terror. "Help! Somebody help me!" he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Jack's body tensed as he spotted movement in the shadows. A figure in dark clothing emerged from behind the diner, something glinting in their hand, catching the neon light. A knife. "Emily, lock the doors," Jack commanded, already moving. Years of combat training took over, as he assessed the situation in seconds. The man in the suit, who Jack would later learn was Gregory Blackwell, stumbled backward, nearly falling. "Please," he gasped. "They're trying to kill me!" The masked attacker lunged forward with frightening speed. Jack moved faster, positioning himself between the attacker and their target. He could hear Emily's frightened gasp from the car, but his focus remained razor-sharp. "Back off!" Jack's voice carried the authority of his military years. "Emily, call 911. The attacker hesitated for a split second, perhaps surprised by Jack's intervention. That moment was all Jack needed. He struck out with precision, grabbing the knife hand while simultaneously driving his shoulder into the attacker's chest. The impact sent them both sprawling onto the wet pavement. Jack felt the cold bite of the knife nick his arm as they grappled, but adrenaline dulled the pain. He could hear Emily's voice, sharp with fear but steady as she spoke to the emergency dispatcher. The masked figure twisted violently, trying to break free. "Stand down," Jack commanded, using his weight to pin the attacker. But they were skilled, possibly professionally trained. With a sudden move, they broke Jack's hold and scrambled to their feet. For a moment, the attacker stood there, chest heaving. Their eyes, visible through the ski mask, darted between Jack and Gregory. Then, Without a word, they turned and sprinted into the darkness between buildings. Jack started to give chase but stopped himself. Emily and the terrified CEO needed protection more than he needed to catch the assailant. He turned to find Gregory Blackwell leaning against his car, shaking violently. They almost. Gregory couldn't finish the sentence, his manicured hands trembling as he tried to straighten his tie, a nervous gesture that seemed almost comical given the circumstances. "The police are coming, Dad," Emily called from the car, her face pressed against the window, phone still in hand. Jack nodded, keeping his body positioned to shield both Emily and Gregory in case the attacker returned. His arm was starting to sting where the knife had caught him, but he ignored it. In the distance, he could hear approaching sirens. "You saved my life," Gregory said, his voice gradually steadying. "I don't know who you are, but you saved my life." Jack kept scanning the shadows, his posture rigid. Just did what anyone would do. But they both knew that wasn't true. Most people would have stayed in their car, called the police, and watched events unfold. Jack had acted without hesitation, putting himself between a stranger and certain death. The sound of sirens grew louder, and red and blue lights began to paint the wet parking lot in alternating colors. Jack could feel Emily's eyes on him from the car, a mixture of fear and pride in her gaze. He had protected someone tonight, just as he had protected his country years ago. But this time, his daughter had witnessed both his courage and the dangers that courage could bring. Police cars began pulling into the parking lot, their headlights cutting through the darkness where the attacker had disappeared. Gregory Blackwell straightened up, trying to compose himself, but his eyes remained fixed on Jack with an expression of desperate gratitude. Red and blue lights painted the diner's parking lot in rhythmic pulses. 2 police cruisers and an ambulance crowded the small space, their presence drawing curious onlookers from nearby businesses. Jack Turner stood steady, his arm wrapped protectively around Emily's shoulders as she pressed close to his side. A paramedic draped an orange blanket over Gregory Blackwell's shoulders as he sat on the back step of the ambulance. Despite his expensive suit and commanding presence, the CEO looked small and vulnerable under the harsh emergency lights. "And you've never seen the attacker before?" Officer Martinez asked, his pen hovering over his notepad. "No, sir," Jack replied, his military training evident in his posture. Male, probably 6 feet tall, wearing dark clothes and a ski mask. He came at Mr. Blackwell with what looked like a hunting knife. Emily squeezed her father's arm. "Dad moved so fast," she said, her voice still trembling slightly. "One second we were walking to the diner, and the next." She trailed off, looking up at Jack with a mixture of pride and lingering fear. Officer Martinez nodded, jotting down notes. "You're lucky Mr. Turner was here, Mr. Blackwell. Not many people would have jumped in like that." Gregory pushed aside the paramedic's hand and stood up, his face flushed. Lucky doesn't begin to cover it. He walked over to Jack, his expensive shoes crunching on the loose gravel. "You saved my life, Mr. Turner. I don't forget things like that." Jack shook his head modestly. "Anyone would have—" "No," Gregory cut him off firmly. "Anyone wouldn't have. I saw your moves. Military trained?" "Yes, sir." "Marines, 12 years. Gregory's eyes lit up with interest. "Currently employed?" "I do maintenance work at the community center," Jack replied. "Part-time security at the mall on weekends." Gregory straightened his tie, a habit that seemed automatic despite his disheveled state. "Not anymore. I want you as my head of security. Full-time, complete benefits, salary that'll triple what you're making now." Emily's grip on Jack's arm tightened, and he could feel her excitement without even looking at her. But years of experience had taught him caution. "That's a generous offer, Mr. Blackwell, but—" "Gregory, please." The CEO pulled out a business card and pressed it into Jack's hand. "I need someone I can trust. Someone with training, instincts, and integrity. That's you, Mr. Turner." Jack glanced down at Emily, seeing the hope bright in her eyes. He knew what this could mean. College tuition covered, no more scraping by, no more picking up extra shifts just to make ends meet. "Dad," Emily said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "maybe this is God opening a door." The simple faith in her words touched something deep in Jack's heart. She had their mother's way of cutting straight to the truth of things. Gregory watched their exchange with keen interest. "I'll make it worth your while, Jack. My security team needs an overhaul, and I need someone who can handle both the tactical and personnel sides. Your military experience, plus what I've seen of your character tonight, you're exactly what I'm looking for." Another police officer approached, needing Gregory's statement. Before walking away, the CEO added, "Think it over tonight. I'll call you tomorrow morning to discuss details." Jack watched as Gregory gave his statement, noting how the man's authoritative demeanor had returned now that the immediate danger had passed. The paramedics packed up their equipment, and the crowd of onlookers gradually dispersed. "Your dad's a real hero," Officer Martinez said to Emily as he closed his notepad. "You must be proud." Emily nodded, her eyes shining. "I've always known he was." After giving their contact information and signing their statements, Jack and Emily watched as Gregory climbed into the back of a sleek black car that had arrived to pick him up. The CEO rolled down his window. "Tomorrow morning, Jack. This is the right move for both of us." He nodded once, decisively, before the car pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the night. Jack stood for a moment, the business card heavy in his hand. Emily leaned against him in the cooling evening air. "Ready to head home, kiddo?" They walked in comfortable silence, their footsteps echoing on the quiet suburban sidewalk. Jack could feel Emily practically buzzing with unspoken thoughts beside him. His own mind was racing with possibilities, security protocols, staff assessments, scheduling, already falling back into the familiar patterns of tactical planning that had been his life for so many years. "Dad?" Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you going to take the job?" Jack looked down at his daughter, seeing both her mother's strength and her own unique wisdom in her expression. "What do you think I should do?" "I think." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as scary changes. And I think you're exactly the kind of person Mr. Blackwell needs right now." They turned onto their street, where their small house waited, its porch light a welcoming beacon. The business card in Jack's pocket seemed to pulse with possibility, with promise, with the potential for a new chapter in their lives. The iron gates of the Blackwell estate swung open with silent precision. Jack's weathered pickup truck felt out of place as it crawled up the winding driveway, gravel crunching beneath its tires. Emily pressed her face against the passenger window, her eyes wide at the sight of the sprawling mansion ahead. "Dad, this place is huge," she whispered, taking in the 3-story colonial home with its pristine white columns and perfectly manicured gardens. A valet in a crisp uniform stepped forward as they parked. Jack caught Emily trying to smooth down her simple sundress, suddenly self-conscious. He gave her hand a quick squeeze. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Gregory Blackwell emerged from the front doors, wearing a casual polo shirt that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. "Jack! Emily! Welcome to our home." His handshake was firm, his smile genuine. "Please come inside. My wife is eager to meet you both." The entrance hall stretched 2 stories high, with a crystal chandelier that cast rainbow sparkles across marble floors. Their footsteps echoed as Gregory led them through to a sunny sitting room. Claudia Blackwell rose from an antique armchair, her posture perfect and her blonde hair styled just so. "Mr. Turner," she said, extending a delicate hand. "How lovely to meet you." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mrs. Blackwell," Jack replied, noting how she seemed to be studying his face. "This is my daughter, Emily. Please call me Claudia." She gestured to the plush sofas. "Shall we have some tea? Gregory has told me all about your heroics last night." A maid appeared with a silver tea service, and Jack watched Emily carefully handle the delicate china cup. He could tell she was trying her best to sit up straight, to match Claudia's elegance. "I'd like to show Jack the security setup," Gregory announced after they'd exchanged pleasantries. "Emily, perhaps you'd enjoy seeing the gardens? Our groundskeeper has the most magnificent rose collection." Before anyone could respond, the patter of small feet drew their attention. A little boy, no more than 5, came racing into the room in dinosaur pajamas. "Samuel," Claudia's voice carried a sharp edge, "you're supposed to be with Miss Jenkins." But Samuel had already spotted the visitors. His round face lit up as he studied Jack, and without hesitation he ran straight to him. tiny arms wrapped around Jack's leg as the child looked up with startling blue eyes. "Mommy says you're my daddy," Samuel whispered, clear as a bell in the sudden silence. The teacup in Jack's hand trembled slightly. He stared down at the boy's face. Those eyes, that particular shade of cornflower blue, the slight dimple in his left cheek. His heart seemed to stop for a moment as he recognized features he hadn't seen in years, not since. Claudia's laugh cut through the tension, high and brittle. "Oh, Samuel has such an active imagination. He's been watching too many father-themed cartoons lately." She hurried forward, trying to disentangle Samuel from Jack's leg. "Come along, darling. Miss Jenkins is looking for you." "But Mommy, you said—" Samuel's protest was cut short as Claudia swept him up into her arms. Gregory chuckled, seemingly unaware of the undercurrent in the room. "Kids say the darndest things, don't they? Now, about that security tour." Emily had gone very still beside Jack, her eyes darting between Samuel and Claudia. Jack forced himself to smile, to nod, to follow Gregory toward his study. But his mind was reeling. The rest of the tour passed in a blur. Jack heard Gregory's words about camera systems and alarm codes, but his thoughts kept returning to Samuel's face, to those familiar features that seemed impossible. The drive home was quiet. Emily stared out the window until they were halfway there, then turned to her father. "Dad?" Her voice was soft, careful. What Samuel said, could it be true? Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No, honey, it can't be." He tried to keep his voice steady. "Your mother and I, we were always faithful to each other." Samuel must be confused. "But Dad, he looks just like Mom's old pictures, the ones from when she was little." Emily's words hung in the air between them. Jack pulled into their driveway, killing the engine. Their small house looked tiny and worn after the grandeur of the Blackwell estate, but right now its familiar comfort was exactly what he needed. "Emily." He turned to face his daughter, seeing the worry in her eyes. "I don't know what's going on with that little boy, but I loved your mother with all my heart and she loved us. That's the only truth that matters." Emily nodded slowly, leaning over to hug him before heading inside. Jack remained in the truck for a moment longer, his hands still gripping the wheel. In his mind he saw Samuel's face again, those blue eyes that were an exact match for Karen's, his late wife's. The same eyes Emily had inherited. He thought of Claudia's quick dismissal, the flash of panic he'd caught in her expression, the way she'd studied his face when they first met, as if searching for something. Jack closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to push away the questions that threatened to overwhelm him. But Samuel's whispered words echoed in his mind, refusing to be silenced. "Mommy says you're my daddy." With heavy steps, he made his way into the house, where Emily was already heating up leftover casserole for dinner. Their simple routine felt like an anchor in suddenly choppy waters. Yet as Jack went through the motions of their evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that his world had shifted beneath his feet. That night, after Emily had gone to bed, Jack pulled out an old photo album. By the soft lamplight, he stared at a picture of Karen as a child, her blue eyes bright with laughter, that same dimple in her left cheek. He traced the familiar features with a trembling finger, features he'd seen just hours ago on a little boy's face in a mansion across town. The morning sunlight streamed through the Turners' modest kitchen window, catching the steam rising from Jack's coffee mug. Emily sat across from him at their small breakfast table, spreading jam on her toast with determined focus. "Dad, I know that." "Look," she said, not glancing up. "You're worried about something." Jack smiled despite himself. She knew him too well. "Just thinking about the new job, sweetheart. It's a big change for us." "Is this about Samuel?" Emily's direct gaze met his. "Because if you took this job just to figure out what's going on with him—" "No," Jack interrupted firmly, setting down his coffee. "I took this job because it's good money and security. Something we've needed since—" He trailed off, but Emily nodded, understanding the unspoken reference to her mother. "Well, then you won't mind if I come with you sometimes." Emily's tone was casual, but her eyes were serious. "You know, to help with homework after school, that big house must have excellent study spots." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Emily. Plus," she continued, buttering another piece of toast, Someone needs to keep an eye on you. Make sure you're safe." Jack couldn't help chuckling. "I'm supposed to be the one protecting you, remember?" "We protect each other," Emily said simply. "That's what family does." An hour later, they pulled up to the Blackwell mansion. Emily had won the argument, as she often did, and came along with her backpack full of schoolwork. The morning air was crisp, and dew still clung to the perfectly trimmed hedges. Inside, Jack began his security rounds while Emily settled into the mansion's library with her books. It wasn't long before tiny footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Jack!" Samuel's face lit up as he spotted him. The boy was dressed in a miniature suit, complete with a clip-on tie. "Are you checking for bad guys?" Jack's heart twinged at the innocent question. "Something like that, buddy. Shouldn't you be with your tutor?" "Miss Jenkins is sick today," Samuel announced, falling into step beside Jack. "Can I help you look for bad guys?" Before Jack could answer, Emily poked her head out of the library. "Hey Samuel, would you like to hear a story instead? I've got some great books here." Samuel hesitated, looking between Jack and Emily. "Can we read about dragons?" "Absolutely." Emily smiled, holding out her hand. "I bet we can find the perfect dragon story." As Samuel scampered off with Emily, Jack continued his rounds, checking windows and testing locks. He could hear Emily's animated voice carrying from the library, with Samuel's excited questions punctuating her storytelling. Near Gregory's study, raised voices caught Jack's attention. He paused, his military training making him instinctively alert. "Can't keep ignoring these threats, Gregory." Claudia's voice was sharp with tension. "I've handled worse," Gregory replied dismissively. "Jenkins was just the beginning. I know how to deal with disgruntled ex-employees. This is different and you know it. If they—" Claudia's voice dropped too low to hear. Jack moved on, not wanting to eavesdrop, but filed away the exchange. As head of security, he needed to know about any potential threats. Throughout the day, he noticed more signs of strain between the Blackwells. Claudia barely looked at Gregory during lunch, and Gregory buried himself in his study, emerging only for brief phone calls in which he barked short commands to unseen subordinates. Samuel continued to shadow Jack whenever he could escape Emily's stories, asking endless questions about everything from Jack's radio equipment to his favorite color. The boy's innocent curiosity made Jack's chest ache with memories of Emily at that age. Late afternoon found Jack checking the perimeter cameras when Claudia's voice drifted through an open window. She was in the garden, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in urgent whispers. "No, you don't understand. We can't let them know about Samuel's real father. Everything would fall apart." A pause. "I know what I'm doing. I've protected him this long, haven't I?" Jack froze, his hand hovering over the camera controls. He shouldn't be hearing this. But Samuel's words from yesterday echoed in his mind. "Mommy says you're my daddy." Claudia's voice grew fainter as she moved deeper into the garden. "Just keep everything quiet. I'll handle it my way." That evening, Jack lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy circles. Emily was asleep in her room, but rest eluded him. Samuel's face kept appearing in his mind, overlaid with old photos of Karen. The resemblance was undeniable, yet impossible. And now Claudia's cryptic phone call added another layer of mystery. Samuel's real father, she'd said. What did that mean? Was Gregory not Samuel's father? And if not, who was? Then there were Gregory's enemies to consider. Jack had seen enough in his military days to know when threats were serious. The tension in the mansion, the hushed arguments, Claudia's fear, it all pointed to real danger. He rolled onto his side, his thoughts churning. Part of him wanted to walk away from all of it. The mansion, the mysteries, the mounting questions about Samuel. But he couldn't. Not just because of the job, but because of Samuel's trusting eyes and Emily's determination to protect him and the growing certainty that this family needed help, whether they knew it or not. The ceiling fan continued its endless rotation, like Jack's thoughts spinning between confusion about Samuel and worry about the threats facing the Blackwells. Sleep remained elusive as the night stretched on, full of unanswered questions and growing shadows. The late morning sun cast long shadows across Gregory Blackwell's mahogany-paneled study. Jack Turner stood near the window, his military-trained eyes scanning the manicured grounds below. Gregory paced behind his massive desk, his usually confident demeanor showing cracks of worry. "Turner." Gregory's voice was unusually quiet. "What I'm about to tell you stays in this room." He stopped pacing and met Jack's steady gaze. "Remember that attacker from the diner? That wasn't random." Jack's jaw tightened. "I figured as much, sir." Gregory sank into his leather chair, suddenly looking older than his years. "Marcus Reeves, former business partner. Brilliant mind, but—" He shook his head. "The man became unstable. Started making accusations, demanding things I couldn't give him." "What kind of accusations?" "The kind that could destroy lives." Gregory's fingers drummed nervously on his desk. "Keep Emily close, Turner. Reeves, he's not above using families as leverage." "I've seen it before." Jack's heart quickened at the mention of Emily. "I appreciate the warning, Mr. Blackwell." "Gregory," the CEO corrected. "After what you did for me, it's Gregory." Outside the study, Jack noticed new faces patrolling the grounds. Armed security guards stood at strategic points, their earpieces gleaming in the sun. The mansion's peaceful facade now felt like a fortress being prepared for siege. Emily was in the garden with Samuel, her teenage form protective over the small boy as they sat on a blanket with picture books. Jack watched them through the window, his daughter's natural grace with children reminding him so much of her mother. "Dad," Emily waved when she spotted him. "Samuel's teaching me all about dinosaurs." The little boy beamed, holding up a colorful book. "Is that right?" Jack managed a smile, though his mind was racing with Gregory's warning. "Having fun out here?" Emily's eyes showed understanding beyond her years. "It's safer in the gardens. Samuel and I can see anyone coming, and there are guards nearby." She glanced at the security personnel discreetly positioned around the perimeter. "Smart thinking, sweetheart." Jack squeezed her shoulder. Later that afternoon, Emily helped Samuel build a fort from cushions in the mansion's sunroom while Jack reviewed security protocols with the new team. The house hummed with subtle tension, like a violin string pulled too tight. "Would you like some tea, Miss Turner?" Claudia appeared in the doorway, elegant as always in her cream-colored dress. "Yes, please," Emily smiled. "Samuel, want some juice?" The boy nodded enthusiastically. But Claudia's attention had shifted to Martha, one of the older maids, who appeared with an urgent whisper. Emily pretended to focus on Samuel's fort while straining to hear their hushed conversation. "The documents arrived, Mrs. Blackwell," Martha murmured. "Lock them in Gregory's safe." Claudia's voice was tense. "These people would kill for what he knows. We can't risk." She caught Emily watching and stopped abruptly. Emily's heart pounded as she helped Samuel stack another cushion. She kept her face carefully neutral, though her mind was racing. When Jack returned an hour later, she waited until Samuel was distracted with his toys. "Dad," she whispered, tugging him toward a quiet corner of the garden. The late afternoon sun painted everything in amber light, but the beauty couldn't mask the gravity in her voice. "They're hiding something bigger than us." Jack's expression grew serious as he studied his daughter's face. The pieces were starting to come together. Gregory's enemies, Claudia's secrets, Samuel's strange claim, and now this. Whatever was really happening in the Blackwell mansion, they had stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple security job. Behind them, Samuel laughed at a butterfly, innocent and unaware. Emily's hand tightened in Jack's as they watched the child play. In that moment, both father and daughter knew their lives had changed irreversibly. The question was no longer if there was danger, but when it would strike, and who would get caught in the crossfire. "Tell me everything you heard," Jack said quietly, leading Emily to a stone bench partially hidden by climbing roses. As she began to speak, the guards continued their silent patrols, and somewhere in the mansion, secrets continued to simmer beneath the surface of luxury and privilege. The truth was there, waiting to be uncovered. But some truths, Jack knew from experience, came with a price. As he listened to Emily's whispered revelations, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover exactly how high that price might be. The morning dew still clung to the mansion's expansive lawn as Jack Turner assembled Gregory's household staff. 20 faces looked back at him with varying degrees of interest and apprehension. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the mansion's east wing, where they had gathered in what was usually the indoor tennis court. "Security isn't just about cameras and locks," Jack explained, his voice carrying the quiet authority developed during his military years. "It's about awareness, noticing what's out of place." He gestured to the group. "Each of you knows this house's rhythms better than anyone." From her spot on a nearby bench, Emily looked up from helping Samuel with his addition worksheet. The 5-year-old boy sat cross-legged beside her, his tongue poking out in concentration as he counted on his fingers. 7 + 3 =" Emily prompted gently. 10, Samuel declared triumphantly, then turned to watch Jack with admiring eyes. Jack demonstrated a simple wrist-grab escape to Maria, the head housekeeper. "Remember, it's not about strength, it's about leverage." Maria nodded, her initial nervousness giving way to determined focus as she successfully broke free from his hold. "Well done," Jack praised. "Now, pair up everyone. Practice what I showed you." As the staff worked together, Jack noticed distinct reactions among them. Thomas, the groundskeeper, threw himself into the training with enthusiasm. The kitchen staff joked nervously but tried their best. But Jack couldn't miss how Bernard, Gregory's personal assistant, held back. The man's eyes darted around constantly, as if expecting trouble from every corner. "Daddy!" Samuel's clear voice rang out suddenly. The boy had abandoned his homework and was running toward Jack with arms outstretched. Several staff members froze, exchanging worried glances. Jack caught Samuel gently, his heart twisting at the title. "Hey buddy, how about we use Mr. Turner instead?" Samuel's lower lip trembled. "But Mommy said—" "Samuel," Emily cut in smoothly, hurrying over. "Want to show me how many jumping jacks you can do? Bet you can't do more than me." The boy's face brightened instantly, previous upset forgotten. "Can too." As Samuel jumped enthusiastically beside Emily, Jack noticed Maria watching the scene with sad eyes. When she caught his gaze, she quickly looked away and busied herself with practice moves. "Remember," Jack addressed the group, pushing down his own confusion, "the most important thing is staying calm in unusual situations. Panic makes us careless." The morning progressed with Jack teaching basic observation techniques and emergency protocols. Some staff members lingered afterward, asking questions about home security and self-defense. Jack answered patiently, noting who seemed genuinely interested versus who appeared to be fishing for information. During a water break, Emily sat with Samuel under a large window. "You know what's special about families?" she asked the boy, who was still calling Jack Daddy whenever others weren't listening. Samuel shook his head, dark curls bouncing. "Sometimes we're born into them," Emily explained. "And sometimes we choose them. Both kinds are real. Both kinds matter." The boy considered this seriously. "Like how you chose to be my sister?" Emily's eyes softened. "Exactly like that." Jack overheard their conversation while demonstrating proper emergency exit procedures to the staff. His daughter's wisdom, so beyond her 16 years, made his chest ache with pride. As the training session wound down, Bernard approached Jack hesitantly. "Mr. Turner," he said in a low voice, "about the new security cameras." But before he could finish, Claudia appeared in the doorway. Bernard immediately stepped back, his face closing off. "Never mind. Excuse me." The rest of the day passed in a blur of security assessments and staff meetings. By evening, Jack was grateful to return to their modest home a few miles from the mansion. Emily had insisted on making dinner, her signature spaghetti and meatballs, and the familiar scent filled their small kitchen. "You're good with him," Jack said as they ate. "Samuel, I mean." Emily twirled pasta around her fork. "He's just a little kid who needs people to care about him, like we all do." Jack was about to respond when movement caught his eye. A shadow passed across their living room window, too large to be a branch, too deliberate to be random. "Stay here," he ordered Emily, already moving. He grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and rushed outside into the darkness. The beam cut through the night air, sweeping across their small front yard. Nothing, but there, on their quiet street, fresh tire tracks marked the asphalt. They curved sharply away from the curb as if someone had left in a hurry. Jack stood in the cool night air, staring at the marks until Emily called him back inside. "Dad?" Her voice carried worry. "What was it?" Jack locked the door behind him, double-checking the windows. "Probably nothing," he said, but they both knew it was a lie. The rest of their dinner sat cooling on the table, the comfortable moment broken by this reminder that danger lurked just beyond their walls. Jack wondered if this was how Gregory felt all the time, watching shadows, questioning every movement, never quite at ease. He thought of Samuel's trusting face, of Emily's gentle wisdom, of Bernard's fearful eyes, and of tire tracks disappearing into the night. Somewhere in this web of secrets and fears lay answers, but for now, all Jack could do was stay alert and keep those he cared about safe. Emily cleared the plates without being asked, her movements careful and quiet. Like him, she was learning to listen for what shouldn't be there, to watch for what didn't belong. It wasn't the life he'd wanted for her, but it was the one they had to navigate now. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mansion's manicured grounds. Jack stood at attention near Gregory's office window, scanning the tree line with practiced eyes. His military instincts had been on high alert all week, a familiar tension building in his shoulders. Gregory paced behind his mahogany desk, phone pressed to his ear. "Listen, Davidson, those contracts need to be ironclad by tomorrow morning." His voice carried the sharp edge of authority that Jack had come to recognize. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves outside, and Jack's gaze shifted. Something felt off. The birds had gone quiet. "We'll discuss the details in person," Gregory continued, unaware of Jack's growing unease. "Let me walk you through the property plans." The crack of gunfire shattered the afternoon calm. Jack's body moved before his mind could process, muscle memory taking over. He lunged forward, tackling Gregory to the ground, as glass exploded behind them. "Stay down," Jack commanded, shielding Gregory with his body. Another shot rang out, splintering the wooden doorframe above them. Gregory's face had gone pale, his phone skittering across the floor. "What? Don't move," Jack ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. He could hear screams and chaos erupting throughout the mansion. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. "Dad!" Emily's voice called out. "Emily, stay back," Jack shouted. "Get Samuel somewhere safe." More shots echoed from the woods, but the angle had changed. The shooter was moving. Jack kept Gregory pinned until the firing stopped, counting the seconds in his head. After 2 full minutes of silence, Jack cautiously raised his head. "We need to move. Stay low. Follow my lead." They crawled toward the door, glass crunching beneath them. Security alarms blared throughout the house, their harsh tone mixing with distant sirens. In the hallway, Jack helped Gregory to his feet. The CEO's usual composure had cracked, revealing raw fear beneath. "My wife Samuel." "Emily's with them," Jack assured him. "She knows what to do." They made their way downstairs, where security staff had already secured the perimeter. Police cars were pulling up to the front gate, lights flashing. "Mr. Blackwell!" Claudia rushed forward, Samuel clutching her hand. Emily appeared behind them, her face tight with worry. "Daddy!" Samuel broke free and ran to Gregory, who scooped him up with trembling hands. Jack's attention was drawn to Gregory's car, parked in the circular drive. Something white fluttered under the windshield wiper. "Nobody move," he ordered, drawing his weapon as he approached the vehicle. It was a note, folded once and held down by the wiper blade. Jack carefully retrieved it using his handkerchief, preserving any evidence. The message was typed in bold letters, "Next time, no mistakes." Police swarmed the grounds, and Jack coordinated with them, providing details about the shooter's probable location and escape route. Emily had taken Samuel to the kitchen, trying to distract him with cookies and gentle conversation. "He keeps asking if the bad men are coming back," Emily told Jack when he checked on them. Samuel sat at the counter, his small legs swinging, cookie crumbs on his chin. "I told him you wouldn't let that happen." Jack squeezed her shoulder, proud of her strength. "You did good, keeping him calm." "I was scared," Samuel whispered, his lower lip trembling. "The loud noises." Emily pulled him into a hug. "It's okay to be scared. But you know what? My dad is the bravest person I know. He'll keep us all safe." Jack's heart swelled at his daughter's words. She had her mother's gift for comfort, the ability to ease fears with simple truth. Hours later, after the police had gone and the windows had been temporarily boarded, Gregory found Jack in the security office reviewing camera footage. "My family could have died today," Gregory said quietly, his usual bravado absent. He looked older in the dim light, the weight of the day evident in the slump of his shoulders. Jack turned from the monitors. "But they didn't. We'll find whoever's behind this." Gregory's hand clasped Jack's shoulder, gripped firm with emotion. "You're not just security, Jack. You're family." His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What you did today, I don't know how to repay that." Jack thought of Emily upstairs, still comforting Samuel. He thought of the note in the evidence bag, the threat it carried. Family. The word held so many layers now, so many complications. But looking at Gregory's grateful face, Jack knew he'd made the right choice, taking this job, whatever mysteries still lay ahead. The mansion felt different in the evening. Shadows stretched across marble floors, and the usual bustle of staff had quieted to hushed footsteps and distant murmurs. Jack found Claudia in the library, a crystal glass of wine untouched beside her as she stared out the tall windows. "Mrs. Blackwell," Jack said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Could we talk?" Claudia turned, her elegant posture perfect as always, but something in her eyes seemed tired. "Of course, Mr. Turner. Please, sit." She gestured to a leather armchair across from her. Jack remained standing. "It's about Samuel." The change was subtle but immediate. Her shoulders tensed, and her fingers tightened around the stem of her wineglass. "What about him?" "He keeps calling me Daddy," Jack said carefully. "And there's something else, something I can't ignore. He looks exactly like my late wife did at that age. I've seen the photos." Claudia took a small sip of wine, her hand trembling slightly. "Children have vivid imaginations, Mr. Turner. Surely you know this, having raised Emily." "This feels different," Jack pressed. "The way he looks at me, the things he says. Did you tell him I was his father?" "Mr. Turner." Claudia's voice grew sharp, but her eyes darted away. "That's quite an accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's a question." Meanwhile, in the garden, Emily sat with Samuel on a stone bench near the rose bushes. The evening air was cool, and she'd wrapped her sweater around his small shoulders. His blue eyes, so much like her father's, were wide and worried. "Samuel," Emily said gently, "can you tell me why you called my dad Daddy?" Samuel pulled the sweater tighter around himself. "I'm not supposed to talk about it," he whispered. "It's okay," Emily assured him. "You can tell me anything. We're friends, right?" Samuel nodded, his lower lip trembling. "Mommy told me the soldier was my real daddy." Tears spilled down his cheeks. "She said it was a secret, but when I saw him—" He buried his face in Emily's side, his small body shaking with sobs. Emily wrapped her arms around him, her heart aching. She thought of her own mother, gone too soon, and all the questions she still had. "Hey, it's all right," she soothed, running her hand over his hair. "Sometimes grown-ups have complicated reasons for keeping secrets." Back in the library, Claudia had moved to stand by the fireplace, her back to Jack. "You don't understand the complexity of this situation." "Then help me understand," Jack said, "because right now I have a 5-year-old boy who thinks I'm his father, and I deserve to know why." Claudia turned, and for the first time, Jack saw real emotion crack through her perfect facade. "What good would the truth do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some things are better left buried." "Not when they involve a child," Jack said firmly. "Not when they involve my family." "Your family?" Claudia's laugh was bitter. "Mr. Turner, you have no idea what you're asking for. Some truths can destroy everything." "And some lies already are," Jack countered. Outside, Emily was still holding Samuel, who had calmed enough to speak again. "Do you think he'll be mad?" the boy asked, hiccuping slightly. "Who? My dad?" Emily shook her head. "He could never be mad at you, Samuel. He's the kindest person I know." "But Mommy said it was a big secret," Samuel insisted. "She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping." Emily felt her throat tighten. "Adults cry too sometimes," she said softly. "It doesn't mean anything's wrong, it just means they're human." Later that night, Jack sat at his kitchen table, an old photo album open before him. Emily had gone to bed, but he could hear her moving around upstairs, probably still processing everything herself. He touched a worn photograph. His wife, Sarah, at age 5, sitting on her grandfather's porch. The same golden curls as Samuel, the same bright blue eyes, even the same little dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. The resemblance was uncanny, impossible to ignore. "What didn't you tell me, Sarah?" he whispered to the photo. "What secrets did you take with you?" The photograph offered no answers, just his wife's innocent childhood smile frozen in time. Jack remembered how they'd met right after his first tour, how quickly they'd fallen in love, how perfect everything had seemed. But now, looking at Samuel's face in his mind, he wondered what else had been hidden beneath that perfection. He touched the edge of the photograph gently, remembering Sarah's laugh, her kindness, the way she'd loved Emily with her whole heart. Whatever the truth was about Samuel, it couldn't change those memories. But it could change everything else. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking time in a world that suddenly felt much more complicated than it had that morning. Jack closed the photo album slowly, but kept the picture of Sarah out, propped against a lamp where he could see it. In the soft lamplight, his late wife's childhood smile seemed to hold all the answers he needed, and all the questions he was afraid to ask. The evening sun cast golden rays through the mansion's windows as Jack adjusted his borrowed tuxedo in the mirror. It felt strange, like wearing someone else's skin. His calloused hands, more used to combat gear than cufflinks, fumbled with the bow tie. "Here, let me help," Emily said, stepping into his room. She looked radiant in a simple blue dress that made her eyes sparkle. Her hands worked quickly, straightening the tie with practiced ease. "Those YouTube tutorials really paid off, huh?" Jack smiled at their reflection. "When did you get so grown up?" "Someone had to learn these things after Mom." Emily's voice trailed off, but she kept smiling. "She'd be proud of you, Dad. Of both of us." A knock at the door interrupted their moment. Gregory stood there, impeccable in his custom tuxedo. "The guests are beginning to arrive. Jack, I need you to do a final security sweep." "Sir, I still think this gala is too risky," Jack said, his military instincts screaming at him. "We could postpone—" "Nonsense," Gregory cut in, his voice firm but not unkind. "This charity event has been planned for months. It benefits veterans' families, Jack. Your people. I won't let fear rule my life." He straightened his own tie. "Besides, I have you here." The grand ballroom slowly filled with Atlanta's elite. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting warm light over flowing evening gowns and polished shoes. Jack positioned his security team at strategic points, communication earpieces barely visible. Emily stuck close to Samuel, who looked adorable in his little suit. The boy had insisted on matching Jack's outfit, right down to the bow tie. They sat at a table near the stage, where Emily helped him color in a small notebook she'd brought to keep him entertained. Claudia floated through the crowd like a queen, her silver dress catching the light. But Jack noticed how her eyes kept darting to the exits, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. She knew the risks as well as he did. The evening progressed smoothly at first. Waiters glided between guests with champagne and hors d'oeuvre. The orchestra played soft classical music that filled the high-ceilinged room. Jack maintained his vigilance, but allowed himself to relax slightly as Gregory took the stage for his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gregory began, his voice carrying clearly through the PA system. "Thank you for joining us tonight. Your generosity will help countless families who've sacrificed so much for our country." Jack saw it before anyone else, a flash of movement near the kitchen entrance. Years of combat training kicked in as he spotted a masked figure rushing toward the stage. Without hesitation, Jack sprinted forward, his body moving on pure instinct. "Dad!" Emily's cry pierced through the sudden screams as Jack launched himself at the attacker. They crashed together, rolling across the polished floor. The man was strong, but Jack had fought stronger. They grappled, knocking over a table of champagne glasses that shattered around them. Two of Jack's security team members rushed in. Together, they managed to pin the masked man down. Jack quickly disarmed him, finding a knife concealed in his jacket. The would-be assassin cursed and struggled, but it was over. As the police were called, the initial panic gave way to excited chatter. The orchestra, which had stopped abruptly, began playing again. Gregory stepped down from the stage, his face flushed with adrenaline and gratitude. "Everyone, please," Gregory called out, raising his hands. "Thanks to the quick action of Jack Turner, we are all safe. This man, this hero, is not just my head of security. He represents the very veterans we're here to honor tonight." The crowd erupted in applause. Emily ran to her father, wrapping him in a fierce hug despite his disheveled appearance. Samuel broke free from Claudia and joined them, clutching Jack's leg just as he had that first day. "You saved everyone!" Samuel exclaimed, looking up at Jack with pure adoration. Jack ruffled the boy's hair, then held Emily closer. His heart was still racing, but now with pride rather than fear. This was what he was meant to do: protect people, make a difference. As the police led the attacker away and the gala slowly returned to its elegant rhythm, Emily squeezed her father's hand. "See, Dad? You're exactly where you're meant to be." Jack smiled at his daughter, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with exertion. But even as he basked in the moment, his trained eyes caught movement in his peripheral vision, a shadow slipping through a side door, unnoticed by anyone else in the celebrating crowd. The morning sunlight streamed through Jack's kitchen window, warming his face as he sipped his coffee. The newspaper lay spread before him on the worn wooden table, its headline bold and clear: "Local Hero Thwarts Attack at Blackwell Charity Gala." His phone buzzed with messages from old military buddies who'd seen the story online. Emily bounced into the kitchen, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad, you're famous!" She grabbed a piece of toast and peered at the article. "Look at that picture. You actually clean up pretty nice in a tuxedo." Jack managed a small smile. The attention made him uncomfortable, but Emily's pride warmed his heart. "It's not about being famous, sweetheart. It's about doing what's right." "I know, Dad." She squeezed his shoulder. "But it's okay to enjoy a little recognition sometimes." The doorbell rang, and Jack tensed instinctively before hearing Samuel's excited voice through the door. "Jack! Jack! We brought breakfast!" Gregory stood on the porch with Samuel bouncing beside him, holding a box of fancy pastries from the local bakery. "The least I could do for yesterday's hero," Gregory said, his usual commanding tone softened with genuine gratitude. They settled around the kitchen table, Samuel insisting on sitting next to Jack. The boy's eyes shone with admiration as he pointed to the newspaper. "That's my Jack! He's the bravest ever!" Gregory nodded, his expression serious. "Indeed he is, son. Indeed he is." He turned to Jack. "The press has been calling all morning. I've arranged for a small conference at noon. Nothing too elaborate. Just a statement about security improvements and community involvement." Jack started to protest, but Gregory held up his hand. "The publicity helps us both, Jack. Shows our strength. Makes potential threats think twice." Emily gathered her things for school, giving Jack a quick kiss on the cheek. "I've got study group after school, Dad. I'll text when I'm done." "Be careful," Jack called after her, watching through the window as she walked down the street. Something in his gut tightened, the same instinct that had kept him alive in combat, but he pushed it aside. The danger had passed. They were safe now. The press conference went smoothly. Gregory spoke eloquently about community and protection, his hand firm on Jack's shoulder. Cameras flashed, reporters called out questions, and through it all Samuel stood nearby, beaming with pride. "Mr. Turner," one reporter asked, "how does it feel to be called a hero?" Jack thought carefully before answering. "I'm just a father doing his best to protect the people who matter. That's all any of us can do." Afterward, Gregory insisted Jack take the afternoon off to rest. "You've more than earned it. We'll see you tomorrow." The house felt oddly quiet when Jack returned home. He checked his phone. No messages from Emily yet. But her study group usually ran late. He decided to start dinner, pulling out ingredients for her favorite pasta dish. The afternoon light began to fade, and still no text. Jack called Emily's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. A cold tendril of fear crept up his spine. He dialed her friend Sarah's number. Study group? Sarah sounded confused. We didn't have study group today. I haven't seen Emily since third period. Jack's military training kicked in, pushing down the panic that threatened to overwhelm him. He moved through the house methodically, looking for signs of struggle or forced entry. Everything seemed normal until he reached the kitchen table. There, weighted down by Emily's favorite coffee mug, was a single sheet of paper. Jack's hands trembled as he picked it up, his world tilting on its axis as he read the typed message, "Trade Blackwell for your daughter." The mug slipped from his grasp, shattering on the floor. Jack's legs gave out, and he sank to his knees among the ceramic shards. The note crumpled in his fist as tears burned his eyes. "God, don't take her too," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, not my Emily." The last rays of sunset painted the kitchen walls blood red as Jack knelt there, trapped between his duty to protect Gregory and his desperate need to save his daughter. His wife's death had nearly broken him. Losing Emily would destroy him completely. In the growing darkness, Jack Turner, the hero of the morning papers, the trusted protector, the proud father, bowed his head and wept, knowing that his worst nightmare had just begun. The sound of shattering ceramic echoed in the empty house, a stark reminder of how quickly safety could splinter into fear, how swiftly joy could turn to terror. The newspaper still lay on the counter, its headline now a mockery of the morning's hope. Local hero thwarts attack. But no headlines could help him now. No amount of training had prepared him for this moment. His daughter was gone, and saving her would mean betraying the man he'd sworn to protect. The weight of that impossible choice pressed down on him like a physical thing, threatening to crush what remained of his heart. Jack's footsteps echoed through his empty house as he paced back and forth, wearing a path in the carpet. Each step felt heavier than the last. The note lay crumpled on the coffee table, its words burning in his mind. "Trade Blackwell for your daughter." Gregory sat on Jack's worn couch, his usual polished appearance disheveled. His tie hung loose around his neck, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Jack, let me turn myself in. I can't have Emily's blood on my hands." "No." Jack's voice was firm, even as his heart raced. "These people aren't the type to keep their word. They'll kill you both." He ran his fingers through his graying hair, memories of Emily flooding his mind. Her first steps, her brave smile after her mother's funeral, her gentle way with Samuel. Claudia dabbed at her tears with a silk handkerchief. "There must be something we can do. The police. The police could spook them," Jack cut in. "One wrong move, and—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The weight of his gun holster felt heavy against his side, a reminder of his military days. Samuel peeked around the doorway, his small face pinched with worry. "Is Emily coming back?" The boy's innocent question twisted like a knife in Jack's chest. Claudia quickly gathered Samuel in her arms. "Of course she is, sweetheart. Mr. Turner will make sure of it." She met Jack's eyes over Samuel's head, her gaze pleading. Jack stopped pacing and stared out the window at the gathering dusk. His training kicked in, compartmentalizing emotion, focusing on strategy. "I'm going in alone," he announced. "They're watching this house. They'll expect Gregory to come with security. They won't expect just me." "That's suicide," Gregory protested, standing up. "These aren't amateur thugs, they're professional killers." "So was I. Once upon a time." Jack's voice was quiet but carried steel beneath it. He turned to face them. "In the Rangers, we had a saying, 'Leave no man behind.' Emily's not just any person, she's my daughter." He moved to his bedroom, pulling out his old military footlocker from under the bed. The combination lock clicked softly as his fingers found the numbers from memory. Inside lay remnants of his past life. Combat boots, tactical gear, a med kit. His hands moved automatically, checking equipment he hadn't touched in years. "Jack," Gregory followed him, hovering in the doorway. "Let me help. My resources." "Your resources are what got us here," Jack said, but there was no anger in his voice. "This isn't your fault, Gregory. But Emily is my responsibility. Always has been, always will be." He laid out his gear on the bed. Black clothing, a bulletproof vest that might still fit, night vision goggles he'd kept just in case. His fingers traced the familiar shapes, muscle memory from countless missions flooding back. "I have some contacts," he continued, checking his spare magazine. "People who can help me track them down. But I need you and your family to stay here, where it's safe. Where I know you're not trying anything noble and stupid." Gregory's shoulders slumped. For the first time since Jack had met him, the powerful CEO looked small. "I never wanted this. All those years of cutting corners, stepping on people to get ahead. I never thought it would come to this." Jack paused in his preparations. "We all make choices, Gregory. What matters is the choices we make when it counts." He checked his phone. No messages, no ransom calls yet. They were playing their own game of wait and see. In the living room, he could hear Claudia softly singing to Samuel, trying to keep the boy calm. The sound reminded him of Emily's mother, singing lullabies years ago. The memory steadied him, gave him purpose. Jack moved to his closet, pulling out a small safe hidden behind old boxes. Inside was a phone number he'd hoped never to use, a contact from his military days who operated in shadows, finding people who didn't want to be found. As he dialed, his hand was steady. This was what he'd trained for, what all those years of service had prepared him for. Not the medals or the missions, but this moment, protecting what mattered most. The call was brief, coordinates exchanged, promises of intel to come. Jack ended it and turned to Gregory. "I need you to promise me something. If this goes wrong—" "Don't," Gregory interrupted. "You're coming back. Both of you." Jack shook his head. "Listen. If something happens, Samuel needs stability. Whatever the truth is about him, about his past, he needs a family. Promise me you'll be that for him." Gregory's face softened. "I promise." The room grew darker as evening approached. Jack knew he should eat, rest, prepare properly. But first, he had one more thing to do. He closed his bedroom door, sank to his knees beside his bed, and clasped his hands. "Lord," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "guide my steps. Let me bring my girl home." The prayer was simple, direct, like all his most desperate prayers had been, in foxholes and firefights years ago. He remained there for a moment, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. In his mind, he saw Emily's face, her determined spirit so like her mother's. He saw Samuel's innocent trust, Gregory's guilt-ridden determination, Claudia's quiet fear. All these lives intertwined by fate or providence, leading to this moment. Jack opened his eyes, faith and purpose flowing through him like steel. It was time to bring his daughter home. The old warehouse loomed against the midnight sky like a hulking shadow, its broken windows reflecting slivers of moonlight. Jack Turner pulled his truck to a stop 50 yards from the entrance, killing the engine but leaving the key in the ignition. The autumn air bit through his jacket as he stepped out, but his hands remained steady, the same steadiness he'd relied on in combat zones years ago. He checked his phone one last time. No signal, just as they'd warned in their second note. His military training kicked in as he scanned the perimeter. 2 visible exits, a loading dock to the east, and what looked like a fire escape on the far side. The surrounding lot was empty, except for a few abandoned shipping containers and scattered debris. "I'm coming, Emily," he whispered, touching the small cross necklace that had belonged to his late wife. The metal felt cool against his fingers, grounding him in the moment. The massive entrance door groaned as Jack pulled it open. Stale air and the musty scent of decay washed over him. His footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, each sound amplifying in the vast space. Ahead, a single industrial light buzzed and flickered, casting uncertain shadows across stacked wooden pallets and rusted machinery. "I'm here!" Jack's voice bounced off the walls. "I followed your instructions. Where's my daughter?" Silence answered him for several heartbeats. Then, from the shadows, "Keep walking! Straight ahead!" Jack recognized the voice from the phone call. Gravelly, controlled, dangerous. He moved forward, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The warehouse opened into a larger space where moonlight filtered through holes in the ceiling. There, in the center, sat Emily. His heart clenched. She was tied to a metal chair, her hands bound behind her back. A piece of duct tape covered her mouth, but her eyes were wide and alert. When she saw him, tears spilled down her cheeks. Emily. Jack took a step forward, but multiple clicks of weapons being cocked froze him in place. 4 men emerged from the shadows, all wearing black masks. Their guns trained steadily on Jack. The leader, taller than the others, with a distinctive scar visible below his mask, stepped into the light. "That's far enough, Mr. Turner." The gravelly voice again. "Where's Blackwell?" Jack kept his eyes locked on Emily, trying to convey strength and calm. She stared back, her gaze fierce despite her tears. Just like her mother, he thought. Brave, even in the worst moments. "Gregory isn't coming," Jack said evenly. "You don't need him, take me instead." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "You? What makes you think you're worth anything to us?" "I'm his head of security. I know his schedule, his weaknesses, his secrets." Jack's mind raced, but his voice remained steady. "And I'm trained military. I'm worth more to you than a businessman." Emily made a muffled sound behind her gag, shaking her head violently. Jack ached to run to her, to tear away the tape and ropes, to hold her close, and never let go. But he forced himself to stay still, knowing one wrong move could get them both killed. The leader stepped closer, studying Jack through the eye holes of his mask. "Interesting offer, but how do we know you're not wearing a wire? That this isn't a trap?" "Search me," Jack said, slowly raising his hands. "No wire, no weapons, no phone. Just a father, trying to save his daughter." 2 of the masked men approached cautiously, their guns never wavering. They patted him down roughly, finding nothing but his wallet and car keys, which they tossed aside. "He's clean," one of them reported. The leader circled Jack slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. "You military types are all the same, so noble, so self-sacrificing." He stopped in front of Jack. "But here's what you don't understand. We don't want you. We want Blackwell. He has something that belongs to us. Whatever he took, whatever this is about, it's not worth destroying families over," Jack said, his voice low and intense. "My daughter is innocent. Let her go, and I'll help you get what you want." Emily made another sound, more urgent this time. Jack glanced at her and saw something in her eyes. Not fear now, but determination. She was trying to tell him something. The leader noticed the exchange. "Sweet, isn't it? Father and daughter, so devoted." He moved to stand behind Emily's chair, placing a hand on her shoulder. She flinched. "But devotion can be a weakness, Mr. Turner. A very expensive weakness." Jack's muscles tensed, every fiber of his being screaming to protect his child. But he forced himself to remain still, to think clearly. These men were professionals, their stance, their discipline, the way they handled their weapons. This wasn't just about money or revenge. Something bigger was at stake. "Last chance," the leader said. "Call Blackwell. Get him here, or things get very unpleasant." "I told you my terms," Jack replied, his voice hard as steel. "Me for her. That's the only deal on the table." The leader was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slightly, and Jack felt a surge of hope, until the man's next words turned that hope to ice. "Take him." 2 of the masked men lunged forward, grabbing Jack's arms and forcing them behind his back. He didn't resist, his eyes still locked on Emily. She struggled against her bonds, screaming behind the tape. "It's okay, sweetheart," Jack called to her as they secured his wrists with zip ties. "It's going to be okay. I love you." The leader pulled out a phone and dialed a number. "We have Turner. No sign of Blackwell." He listened for a moment, then nodded. "Understood." He turned back to Jack, who now stood firmly restrained between the 2 guards. "Well, Mr. Turner, it seems you'll get your wish after all. You're coming with us." His tone carried a smirk. "But first, let's make sure Blackwell gets our message." The leader's smirk vanished as Jack's military training kicked in. With lightning speed, Jack dropped and rolled, catching the nearest guard off balance. His elbow connected with the man's knee, bringing him down with a sharp crack. "Dad!" Emily screamed from her chair, her voice filled with both fear and hope. "Behind you!" Jack spun, barely dodging a punch from the second guard. The warehouse's dim lighting cast long shadows, but Jack's instincts were razor sharp. He grabbed the guard's outstretched arm, using the man's momentum against him. In one fluid motion, Jack twisted, and the guard's weapon clattered to the concrete floor. "Get him!" the leader barked, his voice echoing off the metal walls. Emily strained against her bonds, her face fierce with determination. "You can do it, Dad! Just like you taught me, they're not expecting you to fight back." Her words gave Jack renewed strength. He drove his shoulder into the second guard's midsection, sending them both sprawling. They grappled on the dusty floor, Jack's veteran training giving him the edge. His fingers found the guard's pressure points, and the man went limp with a groan. The leader raised his gun, but Jack was already moving. He dove behind a stack of old crates, the bullets splintering wood where his head had been moments before. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Turner," the leader shouted. "We just want Blackwell." Suddenly, the warehouse's metal door burst open with a thunderous bang. Gregory Blackwell's voice boomed through the space. "Then, here I am." Police flashlights pierced the darkness as officers poured in, their weapons drawn. "Police! Drop your weapons!" The leader swung his gun toward the new threat, but Jack seized the moment. He launched himself across the floor, tackling the man's legs. They crashed down together, the gun skittering away into the shadows. Gunfire erupted from somewhere in the warehouse's depths. Jack scrambled to Emily, shielding her with his body as bullets pinged off metal supports. He worked frantically at her bonds. "Hold still, sweetheart," he murmured, his fingers steady despite the chaos. "Almost got it." A cry of pain cut through the firefight. Jack looked up to see Gregory stumbling, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Two officers rushed to help him while others continued the firefight. "Jack!" Gregory called out, his face pale but determined. "Get Emily out of here!" The ropes finally gave way. Jack scooped Emily into his arms, crouching low as they moved toward cover. Her arms wrapped tightly around his neck, trembling but trust absolute in her grip. "Keep your head down," Jack instructed, his voice calm despite his racing heart. They darted between storage containers, making their way toward the exit. More police were arriving, their sirens painting the warehouse walls in alternating red and blue. The shooting died down as officers overwhelmed the kidnappers' positions. Jack heard the familiar sound of handcuffs clicking, followed by rights being read. In the relative safety behind a police cruiser, Jack finally set Emily down. She immediately wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face into his chest. Her whole body shook with silent sobs. "I knew you'd come," she whispered into his shirt. "I knew you wouldn't let them win." Jack held her close, his chin resting on her head. His heart was still thundering, but relief flooded through him like a warm tide. Emily was safe. She was alive. Nothing else mattered. Gregory was helped out of the warehouse by paramedics, his shoulder bandaged, but his eyes clear. He caught Jack's gaze and gave a slight nod, a gesture of profound respect between men who had both risked everything for what they loved. Police officers led the handcuffed kidnappers past them to waiting patrol cars. The leader's smirk was gone, replaced by grim resignation as he was placed in the back seat. Emily's grip on Jack tightened as they passed. He stroked her hair gently, his voice soft but firm. "It's over now, sweetheart. They can't hurt you anymore." She looked up at him, her eyes red but determined. "I wasn't scared, Dad. Well, maybe a little. But I knew you'd figure out a way. You always do." Jack kissed her forehead, his throat tight with emotion. His daughter's faith in him was humbling. She wasn't just alive, she was strong, resilient, every bit her mother's daughter. The warehouse that had been filled with danger moments ago now buzzed with the organized chaos of police and emergency response. Evidence technicians worked methodically, photographing the scene. Detectives gathered shell casings, marking each with numbered tags. Through it all, Jack kept his arms around Emily, his heartbeat gradually slowing to match hers. They were both dirty, exhausted, and shaken, but they were together. Sometimes, he thought, that's all a father could ask for, the chance to protect what matters most. EMTs insisted on checking Emily for injuries. Jack watched like a hawk as they examined her, his protective instinct still on high alert. But aside from some rope burns on her wrists and a few bruises, she was physically unharmed. "Your daughter's tough," one paramedic commented with admiration. Must run in the family. Emily managed a small smile at that, reaching for Jack's hand. He squeezed it gently, marveling at how something so simple could mean so much. In that squeeze was every prayer he'd whispered, every fear he'd fought through, every ounce of love that had driven him to this moment. "I knew you'd come," Emily repeated softly, as if those 4 words explained everything. And, in a way, they did. They spoke of trust, of bonds stronger than fear, of a father's love that no threat could overcome. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fresh flowers. Sunlight streamed through half-drawn blinds, casting gentle shadows across Gregory's bed. He lay propped up against white pillows, his shoulder wrapped in crisp bandages, his face pale but alive with gratitude as he looked at Jack. "You could have let them have me," Gregory said softly, his voice rougher than usual. "After everything, the threats, the danger I brought to your family, no one would have blamed you." Jack stood near the foot of the bed, his own cuts and bruises from the warehouse fight still fresh. "That's not who I am," he replied simply. Claudia sat in a chair beside Gregory's bed, her elegant composure cracking as tears rolled down her cheeks. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she reached for her husband's hand. "We almost lost everything," she whispered. "Because of our secrets, our choices." Gregory squeezed her hand, then looked back at Jack with clear eyes. "I've spent years building wealth through any means necessary, crushing competitors, betraying partners, always telling myself the end justified the means." He shook his head slowly. "It took nearly dying, twice, and almost losing everything to see how wrong I was." Emily stood close to her father, her arm linked through his. The terror of her kidnapping still lingered in her eyes, but strength shone through as well. Jack wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer. "You're safe now, sweetheart," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "That's all that matters." A small figure darted into the room, breaking free from a nurse's grasp. "Daddy!" Samuel cried out, running straight to Jack. Without hesitation, Jack scooped the boy up, settling him naturally against his hip. Samuel buried his face in Jack's neck, small fingers clutching his shirt. The room grew quiet. Claudia watched them, fresh tears spilling, while Gregory's expression softened with understanding. Jack simply held Samuel, one hand rubbing gentle circles on the child's back. He didn't correct the boy's words, didn't push him away. Instead, he offered what Samuel needed most: simple, unconditional love. "I was so scared," Samuel whispered against Jack's collar. "The bad men, they're gone now," Jack assured him, his voice gentle but firm. "You're safe, too. We all are." Emily reached up to smooth Samuel's hair, her own eyes glistening. "We'll protect you," she promised. "That's what family does." Gregory cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "Jack," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "these past weeks have taught me more than 30 years in business ever did. I've learned what real courage looks like, not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in how you live, how you love." He took a shaky breath. "I want to do better. Be better." "The foundation," Claudia spoke up suddenly, wiping her eyes. "The one we discussed last month, Gregory. For veterans and struggling families." Gregory nodded, his face brightening. "Yes, Jack. I want to use my resources for good now. Help people who really need it." He looked at his wife, then back to Jack. "From now on, we build something good together." Jack shifted Samuel in his arms, feeling the boy's breathing even out as he relaxed. The weight felt right, felt natural, just as Emily's presence at his side anchored him. He looked at Gregory and Claudia, seeing not the wealthy, distant couple from weeks ago, but two people learning, changing, reaching for redemption. The sunlight grew stronger, filling the room with warm, healing light. In that moment, surrounded by these people who had become so unexpectedly intertwined with his life, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced since losing his wife: the sense that family could grow, could heal, could be chosen as much as given. Emily leaned her head against his shoulder, and Samuel's small hand patted his cheek. Together, they stood in that hospital room, where pain and fear were giving way to something new: hope, purpose, and the promise of better days ahead. Golden morning light bathed the Blackwell Mansion's sprawling lawn, where dozens of tables draped in white linens dotted the perfectly manicured grass. A banner stretched between two oak trees read, "Veterans Support Initiative, Building Bridges Together." The late summer breeze carried the scent of coffee and fresh pastries as volunteers bustled about, setting up the last decorations. Jack Turner stood at the edge of the makeshift stage, fidgeting with his tie. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, preferring to work quietly in the background. Emily appeared at his side, straightening his collar with gentle hands. "You look great, Dad," she said, beaming with pride. "And your speech is going to be perfect." "I'm not much for public speaking," Jack admitted, his voice low. "Give me a security crisis any day over this." Emily laughed, the sound as bright as the morning sunshine. "Just speak from your heart. That's what you're best at." The crowd grew steadily as more people arrived: veterans in pressed uniforms, local families with children, business leaders in suits, and community members from all walks of life. Gregory Blackwell, his arm still in a sling but healing well, worked the crowd with practiced ease, though there was a new humility in his manner that hadn't been there before. When it was time, Gregory took the stage first, tapping the microphone. "Good morning, everyone. We're here today to announce something special: the Turner Blackwell Veterans Initiative." He paused, looking directly at Jack. Sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to understand what truly matters. Thanks to Jack Turner, I not only survived an attempt on my life, but I learned what real courage and integrity look like. Jack felt his cheeks warm as applause rippled through the crowd. Gregory continued, "This initiative will provide support, job training, and community connection for veterans transitioning back to civilian life, because every hero deserves a chance to come home properly." When Jack finally stepped up to the microphone, he saw Emily giving him a thumbs up from the front row, where she sat with Samuel perched on her lap. The little boy waved enthusiastically, and Jack couldn't help but smile. "I'm not great with fancy words," Jack began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "But I know about coming home from war and feeling lost, about trying to rebuild a life while carrying memories that weigh heavy on your heart." He paused, looking at Emily. "What saved me was having someone to live for, someone who needed me to keep going. And now, through this initiative, we can be that support for others." As Jack spoke about courage, compassion, and faith, he noticed Claudia Blackwell watching him intently from her seat. Her usual mask of careful composure had softened, and there were tears in her eyes. After the speeches, while people mingled and enjoyed refreshments, Emily and Samuel raced across the lawn, playing an elaborate game of their own invention. Their laughter carried across the gathering, drawing smiles from everyone who heard it. Samuel's joy was particularly infectious. He'd been more carefree since the danger had passed, as if a weight had lifted from his small shoulders. Claudia approached Jack as he watched the children play. She stood beside him in silence for a moment, her hands clasped tightly together. "I never properly thanked you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just for saving Gregory's life, but for—" She glanced at Samuel, who was now giving Emily a piggyback ride. "For being what Samuel needs. For showing him what a father's love looks like, even if—" She trailed off, unable to finish. Jack nodded, understanding the weight of what remained unsaid. "He's a remarkable boy," he replied simply. "And Emily adores him." "Blood isn't everything," Claudia said softly. "I've learned that. Sometimes the family we choose matters more than the family we're born into." She touched Jack's arm briefly. "Thank you for choosing to be part of ours, despite everything." The morning wore on, filled with conversations about hope and new beginnings. Veterans shared their stories with each other, finding understanding in shared experiences. Gregory moved through the crowd, listening more than speaking, making notes about what more could be done to help. As the event began winding down, Jack found a quiet moment to himself. He stood at the edge of the lawn, watching Emily and Samuel chase each other through the dewy grass. The rising sun painted everything in soft gold, making the moment feel almost magical. Samuel's laughter rang out as Emily caught him, spinning him in circles. The boy's eyes shone with pure joy, and Emily's face glowed with the same gentle kindness her mother had possessed. Looking at them, Jack felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. "Wrong dad, wrong kid," he whispered to himself, a small smile playing at his lips. "But the right love, the right family. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending." If you enjoyed the story of Jack Turner, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.